Hey everybody, welcome to the Modernism Lecture. We only have 15 minutes, so I'm going to jump right into it. This will be our last major unit. It starts off with a discussion on the typical American dream, because now that we've come so far, we can sort of look at if we've lived up to who we are um, as this great nation, and what you think of the American dream, if it's real or not, and what you take away from it. And that's very much what the novel, The Great Gatsby, has to do with it. Okay, go away emails. So let's get into it. So the modern age was in the shadow of all these horrific events, which is going to really be the backdrop culturally for this very dark time and this sort of questioning all our values and wanting to throw out how we've done things before and bringing something new. And the first thing to kick that off was at the turn of the century was World War One, and this was a very horrific war, both in terms of a huge loss of life, but it just involved so much of the world that mankind sort of looked at itself and went, how did we get to this point? We're involved in a world war. It's called the War to End All Wars, because people seriously thought, like, we can't do anything worse to ourselves than this. And these pictures sort of highlight that. Here we have a machine gun too, so you're going to see an increase in technology as well. Disaster, everybody running for it. We're going to fly through because again, only 15 minutes. That's all this free program allows me to record. Tanks are coming in. We have a picture of no man's land, the emptiness and sorrow that war leads to. And then at the same time as this, though, this horrible war is going on. Technology is going to modernize and become what we know of today. Obviously, we don't have these record players like this, but music starts to influence culture more and more. We see all these modern conveniences, and advertisements are going to start to come up, and you guys all know all about that. I don't have to tell you. The telephone. So here's an old school rotary phone. Now we got the cell phones and everything. People are going to start to drive and operate cars. Here we see an assembly line of that. Also, women's issues and issues of race and equality are going to have their foundations in this time, be taken to where they are today. And we see the women will get the right to vote in 1920. So the ideas of equity and equality begin here. So we see these huge changes going on in a very small amount of time. Blank there. We'll skip that. Flapper was ideal, the idea of the modern women that doesn't have to live by society's standards anymore. We studied that idea of differences between the sexes with boys and girls there. And during this time, in the 20s, and while the war is going on, America is actually going through a huge boom economically at the time. There's a big division between haves and have-nots, but now more than ever, America's making a ton of money. However, it was false. It was based on we were producing so much but not consuming it enough. You know anything about economics, there has to be a balance there. And the idea of things like credit started to come out that you could spend, and then, oh, I'll pay it off later. Well, essentially, America spends, spend. So it looks like we're doing great. Everyone's buying all these things. But then when it comes time to sort of pay it off, it's going to lead to, so everyone's happy, everything's great. Yay, these good times are never going to end, right? Everyone's in it. Nope, known as the Roaring Twenties, because it's going to lead to the Great Depression, because the stock market crashes due to these impractical business practices we set up, and we go from our biggest boom to our biggest bust. And if you know anything about the Great Depression, it was absolutely horrible, and it made people question at all if America would ever recover. And if we had just sort of totally screwed this up, as so much of the country is out of work and we're in really dark and desperate times. If you've read of Mice and Men, you know all about that. And so here's a quick little picture walk of the horrors of the Great Depression. A woman questioning, who are we? What are we? Will we ever recover from this? That picture came to symbolize it. And then right after the Great Depression, you think, okay, if we can pull ourselves out of that, maybe we'll be okay. This guy comes along. And so the global picture is that we have reached the point of Nazism, literally maybe the worst thing mankind has ever done. And then we're going to have atom bombs and nuclear bombs follow that. So we start to go into a very dark place historically as modern man sees the horrible capabilities and horrible things that we've led to, which is going to make everyone sort of question of what are we doing? We have continued, are we progressing in the right direction? And the modernists are going to take that and say, you know, maybe we aren't, and how can we change that? How can we flip the script in order to avoid things like getting to an Adolf Hitler? And so America is at the forefront of that, in the center of this movement. Can we be great? Were we ever great? Can we be um, great again as Americans? I'm not talking Donald Trump here. I'm talking in the true sense. Okay. So the period is modernism, 1900 to about 1940. Right now we're in what's considered the postmodern era. I'll do a brief lecture on that at the end. But some critics say we never really left the modern era because we never really found solutions to any of these questions. You'll see what I mean in a second. So modernism is a rejection of realist thought, in so much that the realist thought, let's focus on social problems, but these are solvable. If we write about them, if our culture focuses on them, maybe we can fix ideas of race, religion, what have you that comes up, all our conflicts. Um, with these old values of hard work and the way things are, that we're going to be all right. Modernists thought, no, we're not going to be all right. The way we're doing things has led us to like where I said. So we got to forget that. So it rejects the idea of realists, and in its place, it thinks that social problems were going to be unsolvable unless we had a dramatic change in how we view life, just as I said, and we'll see what does that dramatic change look like. The literature, art, everything at the time is going to push towards that. Therefore, modernists wanted to throw out old traditions. It's sort of like they wanted blank slate. Like, let's get rid of everything, and in the absence of any concrete, this is how we should live. Well, what's in its place? And so that leaves a big question. Writers and artists now ask the question, how far can we push the boundaries of art and social progress? They wanted to experience extremes. Since there's so much extremes going on in the world, they think, let's reflect that in our art and literature in order to reflect back on ourselves and try to figure some things out about us, both in terms of what is considered decent and acceptable to people and the limits of art in general. I'm going to do a quick picture walk because the idea of abstraction in modern art is very strange. A lot of people would say, hey, that's not art, that's just a bunch of colors, right? You got Jackson Pollock here in splatter art. But this is what the modernists wanted to achieve, to subvert that expectation of this is what you should expect from art, from life. We need to get rid of that, because it can be anything. Here's a Picasso. I'm just moving along here. Paul Klee, one of my faves. Even in sculpture, we see the human form somewhere in there, but what is it really? Here is what is called a sound poem. So even in poetry, they said, what if we throw out all the rules of it? What do we come up with? Well, language is really just sound. So this is what you would present. This is the poem itself. And it's almost like falling off the page, all collided together, and they get up and try to perform this. So you see, really pushing to the extremes here. So all this was a movement in Europe as well. You're going to see the ideas of globalization are coming a lot more because we're affecting ourselves a lot more now as people can communicate more, and the world is more homogenous than it ever used to be in the past. So all those movement in Europe and other parts of the world that, well, American modernist writers focused on the negative aspects of American society. What is wrong with us? What is wrong with our traditions, the way we do things that's just not achieving the goals we want? How can we get rid of those, and what do we replace them with? So the major beliefs and things that are going to be reflected in our work, one of the big ones is the ugliness of greed and materialism. So we went from the biggest boom we ever had in the 1920s to the biggest bust. And so that inequity, that shift, wasn't jiving for too many Americans. And a lot of people thought our focus on money and materialism is very negative and hurting who we are as a people. Expect a lot of that in the novel, as a lot of the people are very rich. There's a lot of comment on money and a reflection of who we are. Okay, the idea that there is no God, and a lot of people think, okay, this is just atheism, the belief of no God, but it's the idea of that the moral fabric of society wasn't working and was sort of falling apart during this time with everything that was going on. Meaning, a lot of people get their moral and ethical beliefs from a religion traditionally, right? And so what if we strip that away and we take away the absence of God? Can we be good to each other, and can we lead a productive society without the idea of God? So it's not just atheism, but what if we remove God from the picture? What happens? Another extreme there. you can imagine all these things happening led to a lot of disillusionment. So believing something was one way when it's really not, and it's really another way. Apathy, which I'm sure a lot of everyone understands right now, right? And cynicism, things are negative, sarcasm, etc. So there's a lot of negative emotion. This is where a lot of the darkness comes from this work. It sort of inspected everything that is wrong with us and really didn't pull any punches. As I say, in the connection with there is no God, people thought all this was leading to a basic decay of moral and social values. That no longer did anyone have any. The reason these traditions and things weren't working is people had no respect for them anymore, and we certainly hear that a lot today. As it's always sort of shifting from how we think things should be to how they are and where we're progressing in the future. And the modernists saw that and said, okay, well, where are we going? How can we get there? And this all led to all these ideas, these dark negative ideas, led to people questioning the American dream itself. Was America ever really this great a place? Were we ever special? Um, is all that stuff in the Constitution, what the founding fathers said, and what we said, is that just a bunch of bunk and we've just been telling ourselves lies? And this is sort of at the heart of, boom, the 1925 novel that we're going to study, The Great Gatsby, that takes all these ideas about modern American man and reflects on who we are. Are we doing things right? Um, do we have the right focus in this country? What should they be, and how can we overcome these things? It's an incredibly complex novel that offers more questions than answers. Maybe the most famous American novel, and a great way to end our year because it's going to be a real reflection of um, what you think about these things, whether you think they're real, and certainly in light of everything that's going on now, it's going to be very interesting because America is facing a crisis like it's never seen. So we're in another time where those extremes are being pushed, and are we really all we're cracked up to be? Yes or no? And obviously the answer is very complex, a little bit of yes and a little bit of no, but this novel is going to sort of reflect the ideas that are going on 100 years ago, and you can see how they are now. It's a complex read, it's tough, but it's an amazing read. If there was like one book you should read and get into in high school, it's this one. I'm sorry we have to do it this way, but it's a short read, but it's challenging, and we're gonna do that moving forward, and that's how we'll wrap up the year with a few other things. Okay, hope you enjoyed the lecture. You can take a half page of notes, and you're gonna put it on the first worksheet. Um, and let's have a great end to the year. Thanks a lot, guys.